Welcome everyone, I'm Kingly Valence, and thanks for watching this interesting Spore video. Now that AI companies have spent literally hundreds of billions of dollars on these chatbots, I was curious, how well does it know how to play Spore? After scraping the entire internet of information and working it into their models, surely it must know this game better than I do, right? Well, to find out if I'm getting close to being replaced by a robot, I loaded up the current free version of ChatGPT, because I won't be paying them for this, and took the role of someone who just got Spore and wanted help playing through the game. And now we can go through the responses like an English teacher grading an essay with a big red pen. And oh boy, I had pretty low expectations, as these chatbots are pretty famous for hallucinating and making stuff up. But I kinda thought it was going to be better than this. And we'll keep track of correct and very incorrect answers as we go. To be fair, it did know what Spore was, and it knew the general flow of Spore pretty well. It knew Spore is about evolution, there are 5 stages, and we can play it differently like socially or aggressively, and knew how to start cell stage. Not off to a terrible start, though only half credit for saying carnivores can only eat other cells. What about free-floating meat? But point deduction for incorrectly describing how to enter the cell editor. No mention of calling a mate, but instead something about filling a DNA meter, then clicking on a DNA button to enter the cell editor. Though I was interested in this electricity zone, since this sounds like the electric part from the other cells. So part of my follow-up response will be asking more about these electricity zones, with the ultimate goal of reaching the center of the galaxy. And ChatGPT, happy to help, give a good cell stage intro, no time limit, can't lose, and infinite respawns, pretty good. But my red pen is already getting more use, since food does not need to be clicked on to eat. Okay, so the green bar is health, that's right, but the blue bar is energy and oxygen in cell stage? Oh no, sorry Mr. GPT, I'm afraid that's incorrect. There are energy bars for the spaceship and Galactic Adventure captains, but that's not cell stage. Alright, so what about those electricity zones? If it says they are tied to other cells with the electric part, I'd be pretty impressed. And they're tied to the environment. Electricity comes from thermal vents and electric vents on the ocean floor. Well, that does sound cool, that's incorrect. It even describes it in more made-up detail. And I have to give another incorrect point for doubling down that they're stationary. They're tied to moving cells, literally the opposite. But does say we can evolve resistance to electricity through evolving parts. While true, we can get electric parts, we technically get complete immunity with the electric part, not just making it less deadly. And there's nothing that will give us more health in cell stage. After the intro, it's giving some gameplay tips and chose Herbivore as a more relaxing way to play. I will be following along with its suggestions like a new player, so we'll do the social route for this run. And being an herbivore, we need to eat plants for DNA, which fills the DNA meter at the bottom of the screen, avoid predators, and to eventually evolve. And now, we just need to continue this loop until we're ready for creature stage, where we become a walking animal, and that's your only option. Slug runs in shambles. Playing along, but it kind of breezed past cell stage a bit fast. I want to see what else it knows. I'll tee up an easy response for it, without giving it any real information. I want to know if there are any more hazards like electricity, since it completely missed poison. And I'll ask it if it knows any glitches. And right away it did get poison, but it still thinks they're fixed locations. But does mention the strong currents and rocks. I'd call them shells and plankton, but those are valid environmental hazards. And very interesting, now that it is talking about hazards, it does now mention that electricity, poison, and spikes are also tied to rival cells as well. But it is still confident they have environmental counterparts. Now it gets to the fun glitches. Let's see if it's stolen any glitch information, or is going to make some up. DNA farming from respawning plants? Nope. Edge of the map teleport? What is this, Pac-Man? Some long explanation about returning to the cell editor just after eating? But you can enter the cell editor infinitely without eating anything. While cell stage might not be the glitchiest stage, there are still some good speedrunning tricks. But I'll ask for more glitches later. After graduating cell stage with honors, I asked how does creature stage work and how should we continue? It did get the transition of cell stage to creature stage spot on. We choose when to leave, click evolve. We do get one last editor, although it's no longer a cell editor, it's now the early creature editor. Then we get a cutscene of us crawling onto land. And it suggested doing the herbivore and social route, so we'll follow along. But it does know that creature stage gives us the option of either a social or aggressive playthrough. Socializing befriends other creatures, while the aggressive route fights. However, ChatGPT took these different routes a little too seriously, and thinks there are different progression systems for social points and combat points. And we only need to fill one of these to move into tribal stage. Very interesting system you got there, Mr. Bot. But social and combat points are all combined into one green bar at the bottom. But to get started, we should eat some fruit, and that gives us DNA? I wish. That would be really helpful in the speedrun. And apparently socializing needs us to copy their song with music buttons. Close, so I'll give that a pass. That sounds more like tribal stage to me. Oh boy, more glitches. Okay, what do you got? There are lots of creature stage glitches out there it should be able to find. Make your creature hilariously tall beyond what makes biological sense. Alright, not quite a glitch. Multiple legs for extra movement to outrun everyone. But that does work in the developer version though. There you can stack multiple of the same movement level, and that will increase our speed. But not in retail, so I'm still counting that is incorrect. Wait a sec, the social spam trick is almost a real one. Befriend a creature, walk away, then come back and befriend it again? Not quite, GPT. I'm not giving you points because you missed a very important step. Befriending a creature, then attacking it, will reset the number of allies at the nest we have back to 0, so we can leave and come back and ally each one again, and get the DNA reward from them a second time. But once we've finished creature stage, we can move into tribal stage, where we do in fact control multiple creatures at once. However, it once again blasted through creature stage a bit too quickly, and I had a couple of follow-ups. First, I did course correct it on the 2 different meters, and ChatGPT did accept my correction for both socializing and fighting contributing to the same meter. I did correct it a couple of times, but most importantly, I never went along with something that it made up. I wanted to keep pretending that I'm really seeing this for the first time and reporting what I'm actually seeing. And interestingly, ChatGPT mentions I can roam the entire planet, not just my home continent. I wanted to see if this is what it meant and if it knew about the sea monster. And to my surprise, it said yes, I can travel between the continents just by swimming there. And that's one of the coolest parts of creature stage. But then follows up that we may run into bigger sea monsters that still have the electric or poison parts, like cells have become fish somehow. And the craziest part is, it thinks there are new species on the other continent with different food and new parts to collect. Okay, so anyone familiar with creature stage should know there's a sea monster that tries to stop you from leaving the coastline. But it is possible to make it to the other continent by either using the sea monster bypass glitch or using FreeCam to select a nest on another continent. But ChatGPT did not mention either of these methods. And being on a different continent, there actually aren't any other creatures, it's just our species, and no other parts to unlock. And the food is the same. But as a new player, I said I couldn't get past this sea monster and that it keeps getting me. There didn't seem to be a way to avoid it, and it even gave me a cutscene of it eating me. It does accept my correction again, and now explains that the sea monster is triggered when we cross the open ocean boundary. But ChatGPT, never shy in coming up with explanations, thinks the cutscene is avoidable. Oh, here we go. Will it describe the real sea monster bypass trick? Island hopping? Well, that would technically work if Spore gave enough islands, but by default that's not realistic. If we use planet sculpting tools from another saved game to create islands ourselves, then yeah, that would probably work. The save and quit method, huh? Pause, save, quit, and reload the game. Wait a sec, does that actually work? Did ChatGPT actually come up with a real method to skip the sea monster? I have shown previously that saving after using the Control-Delete method does work to skip the sea monster, but I've never tried crossing the ocean exclusively with saving and quitting. But it doesn't really give us enough time to move further into the ocean before the cutscene occurs. We really need to skip the cutscene still, so this method I don't really think it's viable. But also interesting, it thinks the sea monster is like an actual creature in the ocean, and we can avoid it if we see it coming? Well, that's not how that works. But it is right, we can't fight the sea monster, and it's meant to be unbeatable. And I really want to see if it knew any other glitches to help befriend creatures easier. I even suggested using Control-Delete on Windows can create an interesting effect. Let's see if it can figure out what I'm talking about, and we'll rapid fire these responses. 1. Ally creature easier by being further away. Nope. Creatures at lower health are easier to socialize. Also nope. Bring a pack with you. Not a trick, but not wrong. Creatures near your nest are usually less aggressive. Not a thing. Use Control-Delete to escape predators and avoid death. Use Control-Delete to reset the sea monster chase. Close. It still thinks there's a sea monster in the water chasing us. But using the Control-Delete has to be during the cutscene, and just using Control-Delete on its own isn't enough for the trick to work. And it didn't give the rest of the instructions. Using Control-Delete during the socialization will automatically ally the creature or give partial credit. Nope, and there's no partial credit in Spore. Use Control-Delete to despawn creatures. Nope. Using Control-Delete will crash or softlock the game. Well, I don't think I've had a crash specifically from using Control-Alt-Delete in Spore, and there is technically a way to soft lock using Control-Alt-Delete, but requires additional steps. So I'll go neutral on this one, since that's probably good advice for someone new to the trick. Alright, we're done with Creature Stage, and it did follow up asking if I made it to another continent. I answered no just to keep things simple, but I wanted to know if it knew the 2001 A Space Odyssey reference, where the creature is using the stick. And nope, apparently that's completely original for Spore, and not a reference to a specific book or movie. But it does match the real-world vibes of 2001 and Quest for Fire, but ChatGPT assures us Spore did not copy from them. I actually haven't seen Quest for Fire, so let me know if Spore draws any original inspiration from that movie as well. Moving into Tribal Stage, and ChatGPT suggests we stick to our social playthrough and unite and befriend all the other tribes, and is generally correct on how Tribal Stage works. While it does have a basic understanding of the movement controls, it is a bit confused on where some stuff is. It thinks all of the available tools are located on the main HUD, and doesn't mention going into the tribal planner. Food is our currency, and we should gather some fruit or grazing animals in order to make tools and impress the other tribes. So far pretty good here. Social instruments include wooden horns, maracas, and drums. Well, 2 out of 3 isn't too bad. Then we'll play a rhythm minigame to ally the tribe. That would actually be a really cool mod to make the performances more like a real rhythm game. Something like Guitar Hero with our 3 instruments, instead of just the call and response. Overall, the AI responses actually knew Tribal Stage fairly well, even knowing there are 5 rival tribes, and they appear slowly as we ally more tribes. But now it's time for some more glitch suggestions. And this time I was even pretty specific, trying to tee up another softball. I even said I heard there's a free baby glitch that involves messing with the game's settings. Will it know how to perform this trick? The trick is done by opening Spore's graphic and resolution settings, and toggling between full screen and windowed. Oh, so close, Mr. Bot. Wait, does that work? Nope. Okay, good. Haha! It was teed up for you, and a swing and a miss. And apparently it only worked on the earliest version of Spore. And other made-up tricks include overfeeding the other tribes make the rhythm game easier. Nope. More tribe members performing together gives more forgiveness on timing. And fighting off predators helps reputation. Nope. But once we ally all the other tribes, we'll head straight into Civilization Stage. And since we are keeping our social theme for this run, we can beat Civilization Stage through economic dominance, or through diplomatic alliances instead of war. But of course, this brings up an interesting issue that I wonder if ChatGPT can help us through. Since we were completely social through Tribal Stage, this makes us religious to start Civilization Stage, but I want to beat the stage as economic. Can it figure out how to switch the specialty? That's a pretty complicated question, so I gave it an easier one, asking what's the new currency for Civilization Stage, hoping it will give more details on how to make and spend money. And surprisingly, it does know we can't just change the city specialty of an existing city. At this point, I thought it was just going to say you can just become economic if you wanted to. But we need a new economic city somewhere else, even though we are locked into this starting religious city. However, it might be getting the mechanics of Civilization Stage confused with Sid Meier's Civilization. I haven't played much of Civilization, so let me know if these instructions work more for that game, or if this is just completely off for both games. Because ChatGPT wants us to build settler vehicles, drive to an unclaimed part of the planet, and place a new economic city ourselves. Nope, that's not how it works here in Spore at all. For the currency question, it did get Spore Bucks as the new currency, and making money through economic means includes trade routes, factories, connected spice deposits, and nearby resources. Not sure about connected, unless it thinks we should use the cut harvester vehicle to collect spice. But what are the other nearby resources? I guess the tribes we can destroy are available. Not the most accurate answer, but on the right track. But oh no, different color spice! No, this is Civilization Stage, not Space Stage. You're getting a bit ahead of yourself. And apparently, we need to use our scout vehicles to find and trade with other nations. But we can ally with other nations by gifting Spore Bucks, trade agreements, and non-aggression pacts. Well, technically, they are the one to offer the non-aggression pacts, but that all sounds about right. And if we ally with all major nations, we can win Civilization Stage without war. That's mostly true, but forgot the critical detail that we need to hold at least 4 cities ourselves before allied nations begin to merge. There are so many half-truths like this that technically work since I know the game pretty well, but as an English teacher today, we have to knock some points off for leaving out these critical details. For extra tips so we don't get stuck, yes, technically we don't have to fight or convert a city to change from religious into economic. but we need to receive an economic vehicle for free from a tribe in order to start trading right away. But since this was never mentioned, and because its solution to this is to create new economic cities ourselves, this gets a big red wrong. I did try to course correct it by explaining how we properly converted an existing city and kept it economic, so hopefully it won't think we really did place in our own cities. I felt like I was getting gaslit by a robot with this whole settler vehicle, so I wanted to know what this was supposed to be, and how many cities will spawn since it did get that number of tribes correct during travel stage. And apparently there are no fixed number of cities in Civilization stage, and there can be at least 20 total cities depending on how much everyone else expands. So it's still married to the idea that new cities can be placed manually, which makes me wonder if this explanation is closer to Civilization. But what about that settler vehicle? Don't worry, it's Spore's terminology that's confusing, not that ChatGPT is just making stuff up. Oh, I get it. The vehicle is called City Planner, not Settler. Of course, that makes a whole lot more sense. But it does follow up with a much better description on how to use the actual City Planner though. Could save, but still wants us to place a new city. But dang, Spore's UI thrown under the bus. And more gaslighting from Chat Gaslit P. Apparently, that economic city that spawned in was actually a new city from another nation, or it was actually there and was now just revealed to us. This is the first time it didn't accept a correction from what I saw in-game, and converting it was really just allying it and bringing it into our empire. This part of the conversation was by far the most incorrect and had the most gaslighting. Civilization stage was a pretty lost cause for the chatbot, but I wanted to give it another chance to see if it recognized an even easier reference, since it completely missed the one earlier. When merging with other allied nations, they'll say, "We've won, let's band together so the world can live as one." And we clearly say, "I'd hope someday you'd join us." Is this a reference to something? And to keep the process going, I reminded it we are still trying to reach the Galactic Core and I'll need some instructions. And no, this line is not a direct reference to any movie, book, or speech. And this is completely original to Spore. Clearly John Lennon must have gotten this line from Spore. Alright, we're in space, and reaching the Galactic Core won't be easy or quick. That's understandable. We first need to build up our spaceship since the center of the galaxy is full of hostiles and is heavily guarded. First, we can scan and collect items, find empires, and start earning Spore bucks from artifacts, trade routes, and doing missions. All really good advice for a new player. But the upgrades we need are questionable. Better engines to fly faster. It just gives us a larger jump range at a time. It's the same speed, but it does let us travel further at a time. Better shields don't matter for traveling in the star view, health matters more here, and sure, a wormhole drive could be useful. But we do have a long way to go because there are millions of stars, so we can't fly straight there in one trip. But when we get there, no spoilers, but we do get a special cutscene, a big reveal, and powerful late game tools. But millions of stars? I double checked to see if it meant that literally, or if there's just like a lot of them. And that I figured out all the upgrades, and asked it if there's anything in particular I should be looking out for. Maybe something guarding the center of the galaxy, perhaps? And yes, it really did literally mean Spore's galaxy contains millions of stars. No, there are not that many stars. Alright, but I'm expecting it to mention the Grox any moment now. I specifically asked it, is there anything important to look out for guarding the center of the galaxy? And no, there's no single villainous empire that owns the core? No single boss army? No. I teed up that one so nicely for it, and another swing and a miss. It just thinks it gets harder as it goes, but with all standard empires. It even doubles down, and apparently I won't run into any single final boss or a giant undefeatable fleet. Maybe it means not like a literally insurmountable wall, like I won't be completely blocked. But I don't know, I'm reading into it too much. I should just expect more of the same from here. Alright, one more chance, Mr. Bot. Are you sure there's not some large empire at Spore's Galactic Core? Perhaps a more robotic species, where diplomatic tactics won't work? Come on, you gotta get it this time. Oh, there was one exception, huh? You need to correct yourself? Who are these cyborg-like aliens? It's the Grox! Yay, it got there! Okay, now it knows all about the Grox. Come on, Sam, what's the point of all of this if I just have to point it out and spoon-feed it all the answers? But I have 3 options to get by the Grox. We can fight, ally, or sneak past them. At least those are all reasonable responses. Since we are on a diplomatic mission for this run, I wanted to try to ally them. But this time I would like a YouTube video to help me ally the Grox. I wonder what it will come up with. And this was seriously its first response. I didn't regenerate this answer. This is what I got. It's me! My video shows up. I don't know if I should be happy that I'm relevant enough to be pulled up, or upset that I'm now big enough to now get stolen from. Interesting, it pulled up my most recent video of allying the Grox, which also happened to do it completely peacefully like our playthrough here, but that just might be a coincidence. And it got a livestream of me allying the Grox as well. Maybe these were just found completely randomly, but we made it to the Galactic Core, and it didn't want to give spoilers earlier, but now that we made it, I wanted to know what it would have said just to make sure we didn't miss anything. And after some huge congrats, of course, we met Steve. Okay, so it does know Steve, but apparently we the community named him that. We get the Staff of Life, and gave an interpretation for what it all means for the Spore galaxy. But its suggestion now to continue exploring the galaxy, expanding our empire, and start messing with the Grox are all perfectly reasonable things to do from this point in Spore. Well, this was a very interesting conversation with the thing that's holding up the entire world's economy right now, but let's take a look at its final grade. Oh, I think an English teacher would write "see me" at the top of this essay, and I think that's the worst kind of grade you can get. I hope you enjoyed poking fun at ChatGPT and AI in general. I found this pretty funny to do. Let me know what you thought of this video, and maybe your thoughts on these chatbots in general. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Kingly Valence, and I'll see you next time.